Part 1, the inaugural Shockey stood on that platform, hand raised, eyes locked on the crowd below. The oath echoed in my skull like a bell tolling for the old America. Chief Justice's voice trembled, whether from age or fear, I couldn't tell. Didn't matter. What mattered was the silence that fell when I turned to face them. The dead have risen to lead the living. That's how I began. No pleasantries. No thank yous to predecessors. The gasps rippled through the crowd like wind through a graveyard. CNN cut to commercial. Fox News anchors froze mid-sentence. But I wasn't speaking to them. I was speaking to the 47% who didn't vote, who'd given up, who thought the system was a tombstone marking democracy's grave. They were about to learn that tombstones can be moved. My first executive order hit the Resolute desk at 12:47 p.m. 13 minutes after inauguration. No transition team had seen it. No advisors had vetted it. Executive Order 001, the Reckoning Protocol. Every federal agency had 72 hours to submit complete financial records. Every contract. Every expenditure. Every expense account over 100. The Washington Post called it unprecedented. I called it a warm-up. By 6 p.m., 3 cabinet secretaries had resigned. By midnight, 7 more. I didn't try to stop them. The dead don't negotiate with cowards. I replaced them with people the establishment had buried: whistleblowers, outsiders, military veterans who'd been silenced for telling truth to power. My chief of staff, a former Marine who'd lost both legs in Fallujah and been denied proper benefits for 8 years while bureaucrats play checkers with his life. Would you have done it differently? Would you have played nice the first night in the White House? Felt like sleeping in a mausoleum. Every wall whispered with the ghosts of compromise, half measures, broken promises. I didn't sleep. I walked the halls, boots echoing on marble that had felt the tread of presidents who'd forgotten what the word serve meant. At 3 a.m., I made my first phone call from the Oval Office. Not to a world leader. Not to a political ally. To a single mother in Ohio who'd written me about losing her son to fentanyl while politicians debated for 3 years over a bill that did nothing. She cried. I didn't. But something in my chest, something I thought I'd buried long ago, stirred. Ma'am, I said, I need you to trust me for 100 days. Just 100. Can you do that? She said yes. 17 million people were listening to the leaked call by morning. My approval rating dropped 8 points. I didn't care. Approval ratings are for politicians worried about tomorrow. I was worried about the next century. Part 2, the first STRIKE Day 3. The Emergency Powers Act. Constitutional scholars screamed. Civil liberties groups prepared lawsuits. My own party called for intervention hearings. I addressed the nation from the Oval Office at 9 p.m. You want to know if I'm a dictator? Here's your answer. For the next 100 days, I'm declaring a state of national emergency, not for war, not for terrorism, but for governmental failure. Every bill in Congress that's been sitting in committee for over 6 months gets an automatic floor vote. Every regulation that's been under review for over a year gets implemented or permanently killed. Every judge appointment that's been blocked gets confirmed or rejected within 2 weeks. I paused, let the camera catch the scars on my knuckles from 3 decades in the ring. You elected me to break things. Watch me work. The Supreme Court's phones rang off the hook. 3 justices publicly stated they'd rule against me. I invited them to lunch. Not a meeting. Lunch. At a diner in Southeast D.C. where the average income was $23,000 a year and the closest hospital had closed due to funding cuts. We ate in silence while families around us struggled to afford their meals. 1 justice left after 10 minutes. 2 stayed for an hour. I didn't say a word during the meal. I didn't have to. Reality preached the sermon I couldn't. By day 7, the congressional backlog had cleared by 33%. Not because they agreed with me. Because they feared what I'd do next. They should have. Part 3, the International Incident Day 12. The NATO Summit. Brussels. Rain hammered the motorcade windows like bullets. Mr. President, my Secretary of State whispered, you cannot tell the German Chancellor to watch me. I walked into that conference room where world leaders had been coddling each other for decades, trading pleasantries while their citizens suffered, and I threw the previous administration's defense commitment papers onto the table. We're done subsidizing your militaries while you lecture us about morality. Here's the new deal: you meet your defense spending commitments within 18 months, or American troops come home. All of them. The French president went pale. The UK Prime Minister started to object. I raised one hand. I didn't fly 5,000 miles to debate. I came to deliver a message: the Undertaker doesn't dig graves for free anymore. You want protection, pay for it. You want partnership, earn it. You want America's blood and treasure, show me why you deserve it. The German Chancellor stood up, face red. This is extortion. No, I said, voice dropping to that register that had silenced arena crowds. This is reality. Something you haven't faced in 30 years. I walked out. The summit collapsed within an hour. CNN called it the end of the Western Alliance. I called it the beginning of honest relationships. By day 15, 4 NATO countries had announced emergency defense budget increases. By day 20, 2 more. The ones that didn't, I started withdrawal plans immediately. Not threats. Actions. You think I was wrong? Ask yourself, when was the last time allies treated America like an equal instead of an ATM? Part 4, the Domestic EARTHQUAKE Day 21, the Healthcare Proclamation. I didn't go through Congress. Couldn't. They'd been working on healthcare for 40 years, and all they'd produced was a Frankenstein's monster that satisfied no one. So I used emergency powers to do what should have been done decades ago. Effective immediately, all pharmaceutical companies selling products in the United States will charge no more than 120% of the median price charged in the G7 nations. Insulin costing $300, it's now $35. EpiPens at $600, try $50. The pharmaceutical lobby descended on Washington like locusts. Their stock prices dropped 17% in one day. Their lawyers filed 843 lawsuits before sunset. I addressed their CEO council personally. You have 2 choices: accept the new reality, or I'll invoke the Defense Production Act and have the government manufacture these drugs directly. Your patents, your monopolies, I'll declare them threats to national security and void them. Test me. 3 executives walked out. I had their companies audited by dawn. The IRS found irregularities in 2 of them within 72 hours. Coincidence maybe. But the message was received. My approval rating jumped 12 points. Then dropped 15 when I announced Phase 2. Every hospital administrator making over $500,000 annually, your salary is now capped at $300,000. The difference goes directly into patient care. Every insurance company denying more than 15% of claims gets investigated for systematic fraud. The medical establishment called me a communist. I called them thieves in white coats. By day 30, 73 hospital executives had resigned. I replaced them with doctors and nurses who'd been blacklisted for speaking out about patient care over profits. The system screamed. Patients cheered. I didn't care about the screams. Part 5, The Education Reckoning Day 35. I visited a school in Detroit. Buckets catching rain in hallways. Textbooks from 2003. Teachers paying for supplies from their own minimum wage paychecks. The principal, a black woman named Mrs. Washington who'd taught for 37 years, showed me a classroom where 42 students shared 30 desks. "Mr. President," she said, voice shaking not with fear but with exhausted hope, "we've been forgotten." I looked at those kids 7, 8, 9 years old sitting on the floor because there weren't enough chairs, and something in me, something that had survived every betrayal, every loss, every dark night, made a decision. You're not forgotten anymore. Day 36. The Education Emergency Act. I redirected $200 billion from the defense budget. Not cut, redirected. Every military base got to keep their funding, but every dollar spent on a new office building or administrative expansion got moved to schools instead. The Pentagon went ballistic. 4-star generals requested meetings. I granted one in that same Detroit classroom, making them sit on the floor with those kids. "Gentlemen," I said, watching them squirm on linoleum, "explain to these children why they don't deserve desks but you need a 5th conference room at the Pentagon." They couldn't. Wouldn't even try. By day 45, construction had begun on 1,700 school renovations. By day 50, teacher salaries in underserved areas had increased by 40%. The money came from cutting federal administrative positions. 12,000 bureaucrats whose job descriptions included words like liaison and coordinator and synergy facilitator. Did some good people lose jobs? Yes. Did it hurt? Absolutely. But I didn't run for president to protect comfortable jobs. I ran to save drowning children. Would you have chosen differently, the bureaucrats or the kids? Part 6. The Criminal Justice Crucible. Day 52. I pardoned 4,732 people. Not violent criminals. Not threats. People serving decades for nonviolent drug offenses while the opioid executives who'd created addicts walked free. People trapped by mandatory minimums that judges openly called unjust but couldn't override. The law and order crowd lost their minds. My own party threatened impeachment. I addressed the nation from a federal prison in Louisiana. I'm standing in a cell that costs taxpayers $40,000 a year to maintain. The man who lived here for 11 years sold marijuana not to kids, not with violence, just sold it while states around him were legalizing it. He missed his daughter's entire childhood because of a law that half the country no longer enforces. I paused, let the camera pan across the empty cell. Meanwhile, a banker who defrauded elderly people of $17 million served 8 months in a minimum security facility with a tennis court. You tell me which one deserved this cage. By day 60, prison reform legislation that had been stalled for 6 years passed both houses. Not because they agreed. Because I'd shown the world what they'd been hiding. Part 7, the Infrastructure Uprising. Day 63. The American Rebuild Initiative. Every civil engineer in the country had been screaming about collapsing bridges, ancient water systems, electrical grids from the 1950s. Congress had been promising infrastructure weeks for 2 decades. I gave them infrastructure reality. Every Fortune 500 company currently paying 0 federal taxes gets a choice: pay a 20% minimum tax, or invest an equivalent amount in American infrastructure projects in underserved areas. You want tax breaks? Buy them with bridges, not lobbyists. Economists predicted economic collapse. Stock market dropped 6% in one day. I didn't blink. By day 70, 43 major corporations had committed to infrastructure projects. By day 75, Construction had begun on projects in 78 cities that hadn't seen investment in 30 years. The protests came from an unexpected direction: environmental groups furious about construction impact, community organizers worried about gentrification. I met with them personally, in those communities, not in Washington offices. "You're right to be worried," I told a room full of activists in Milwaukee. "That's why every project requires 51% of workers to be local hires, 30% to be women or minorities, and 20% to be formerly incarcerated. You want to stop your neighborhood from being destroyed, become the ones building it." Some walked out. Most stayed. Not because they trusted me, but because for the first time, someone was offering them hammers instead of promises. Part 8, the final CONFRONTATION Day 89. Congress voted to limit emergency powers. I'd expected it. Planned for it. The vote passed 287-148. A coalition of traditional politicians terrified that I'd destroyed the old order without asking permission. I addressed them from the House floor. First sitting president to do so outside the State of the Union in 60 years. "Ladies and gentlemen of Congress, you're absolutely right. I've broken every rule in your playbook. Shattered every precedent. Ignored every protocol." I paused, let the silence build like a slow count before the pin. "Because your playbook was written by people who'd forgotten what those words mean, we the people. Not we the politicians. Not we the wealthy. The people." I pulled out a stack of papers, letters, emails, printed social media messages. "These are from your constituents. Not lobbyists. Not donors. Citizens. They're asking why it took a wrestler in a suit to do what you've been promising for decades. They're asking why fixing what's broken required someone to break the system. They're asking." I threw the papers into the air, let them scatter across the floor of the House. "Why they should ever trust you again." The chamber erupted. Half cheering. Half screaming. All of it televised. All of it raw. I walked out without waiting for order to be restored. Day 100, the Reckoning addressed the nation one final time from the Oval Office at exactly 8 p.m. 100 days ago, I told you I was here to break things. I've kept that promise. Pharmaceutical prices broken. Defense contractor monopolies broken. Political gridlock broken. The illusion that Washington works for you shattered completely. I leaned forward, hands clasped on the desk Lincoln used. But I also promised to build something new. And that work that's just beginning. The numbers scrolled on screen: healthcare costs for average families, down 37%. Infrastructure projects started, 4,683. Students in renovated schools, 2.3 million. Nonviolent offenders freed, 4,732. NATO defense commitments met, 9 of 30 nations, up from 3. Congressional bills passed, 127, previous record, 43. Approval rating, 51%, unchanged from election. Half of you love me. Half of you hate me. All of you are paying attention. And that, America, was the point. I stood up, camera following. The next 100 days we're going after the tax code. Then Social Security. Then election reform. I've got 3 years, 7 months, and 10 days left. And I haven't even started digging the graves for the sacred cows. I walked out of frame, leaving only the seal of the president visible. The Undertaker's work had just begun. What really haunts me? You want to know the truth? The thing that keeps me pacing the White House halls at 3 a.m. It's not the protests, not the lawsuits, not the death threats that arrive daily. It's the little girl I met in that Detroit school. She asked me if things would get better. I told her yes. I promised her yes. And now I lie awake wondering if breaking everything was enough, or if I've just created a different kind of graveyard, one where hope goes to die when the next administration undoes everything I built. That's the real horror. Not failure, but succeeding for 100 days in a system designed for 4-year cycles, knowing that permanence is the one thing I can't mandate, can't force, can't will into existence. So I keep moving. Keep breaking. Keep building. Because stopping means admitting that the dead can't actually lead the living. And I'm not ready for that tombstone yet.